So today's book is Who Moved My Cheese? And the reason I chose this book, it's simply because it's a short, crisp read, it's power-packed as well, and I think it contains timeless wisdom, evergreen, and I think these principles can be used by one and all in today's age and time as well. So that's why I chose this book, even though this book was written quite a few years ago. Now the key message this book actually gives us is being adaptable to change. And how? By being proactive. Don't blame, but you take charge of things that are within your control, and that's the most important part, and act and do whatever is required so that you are able to drive the change. What did I like about this book? Some important things this book teaches us is to let go of an old behavior instead of just changing a relationship. You know, many times we complain about our bosses, we complain about our colleagues, it could be even your relationships. So they say, instead of complaining and letting go of them, can you actually change the behavior? The second important thing it tells us is, instead of changing the jobs, can we change the way we do our jobs? And a very important and powerful question that makes us think is, what would I do if I weren't afraid? Because many times the change, the reason why it's resisted is a lot to do with the fear, right? So therefore, if you're not afraid, what would you do? And that really stuck to me, because as a coach, I know how important it is to ask powerful questions. So any change that you're resisting, if you could just pause and think and reflect, what is making you to resist this change, by asking yourself this question, what would I do if I weren't afraid? Then it opens up a whole new perspective, and you'll be able to embrace the change that you want to. So to give you the gist of this book, this is actually a story, right? It's a story about 4 characters who are looking for the cheese. So the cheese is nothing but a metaphor in life. It can be, your cheese can be your job, your relationships, money, house, freedom, your spiritual goals. Why even to play golf, right? So that is the cheese. And the cheese we are looking for is in the maze, and nothing, it's life, but which is the maze, right? So all of us are looking for cheese in different forms. And why are we looking for the cheese? Is because cheese is what makes us happy. So he starts off with a small example of Charlie Jones, who's an NBC TV broadcaster. He had worked very hard, and he was earlier an Olympic track and field games event that he was in charge of. But he was very surprised and very upset when his boss told him that you're no longer going to be doing this, and he shifted him and asked him to take up swimming. Obviously, Charlie wasn't happy about this because it was change for him, right? But then, even though he felt frustrated and unappreciated about this, he started to move his cheese after getting to know about this. That's what the author says. He moved his cheese. He learned about swimming, which is a new sport, which made him feel young, and then he started to get better assignments. His boss started recognizing him, and therefore he says, how we embrace change makes a lot of difference. So this book is divided into 3 sections. So the first section gives us a kind of an introduction. It's about few friends who are getting together as a reunion, and they start discussing change and how everybody is resisting change for different reasons and different circumstances of their life. So one of their friends, he says, I have a story to share, which is nothing but who moved my cheese. And he says, just by changing the way we look at things, we tend to gain something out of it. And then he narrates this story to his friends. So this story revolves primarily around 4 characters. 2 mice and 2 little people. That's what the author says. So the 2 mice, he's calling them Sniff and Scurry. And the 2 little people, he calls them Hem and Haw. And all these 4 of them were actually looking for cheese in the maze that they were in. So the mice, they looked for normal hard cheese so that they can nibble, and the little people used their brains, their beliefs and emotions to search for the different kind of cheese which they believe will make them happy and successful. Now the mice use a lot of trial and error, whereas the little people used complex brains and they wanted to try sophisticated models of finding cheese. The little people finally found their cheese in a station, the author calls it station C, where they find the cheese. The little people had no idea where it came from. They just assumed that it will be there, and they said, okay, come on, let's make ourselves comfortable. And they just thought life will be happy hereafter because we found our cheese. They didn't think beyond. They also, one of the characters says, we deserve this cheese. We worked so hard to find it, right? Many times I think we can relate it with our work life because you think, you have the cheese and, everything makes you feel very happy. Soon this confidence turns into arrogance and they started being within their comfort zone. Now, if you were to look at the mice, what did they do? They scratched around the station C where the cheese was there. They started inspecting it. They started observing whether there were any changes, and they would nibble away their cheese. It so happened one morning, there was no cheese. The mice, they were not surprised about it because they had noticed that this supply was depleting day after day. So they were prepared for this inevitable thing to happen. They did not overanalyze the problem, and to them, it was simple. The cheese is not here, so let's go around looking for more cheese. Whereas the little people, they hadn't paid attention to this. So they were unprepared. They started yelling and screaming. This is not fair. And they were in shock and disbelief saying, how can this cheese go disappearing? And they were extremely unhappy. Now they had to find cheese. And they started looking for other ways. They had to. But then what did they do? They just started to rave about the injustice and they started to get depressed. They said, nobody has warned us this cheese is not going to be there. They were hungry. They were also dejected that there was no cheese. So the author says, the more important your cheese is to you, the more you want to hold on to it. The little people were reluctant because they felt, we are entitled to this cheese. How can this cheese go disappearing? So the mice, what did they do? They went looking for the cheese in other stations. They did not think of anything else but the new cheese. And finally, they find it in station N. That's a new cheese station. Whereas the little people were just starting to get a lot more frustrated. Now, one of the little people, he started to visualize the new cheese. And he was ready to leave station C and go and seek the cheese from the new station. And he said, I think it's time to step out of the comfort zone. It may be dangerous outside, but let's stop giving excuses and move on from the fear of failure. So he said, can we do things better? So he started painting a picture of the new cheese so that he starts to feel more confident. His fear turned into anger. Who? The other one, him, right? His fear turned into anger saying, I'm not finding my cheese. And they were too afraid. But Hem says, if the mice can do it, so can we, right? A lot of us, we tend to gain confidence by seeing others and getting inspired from others, right? So that's what happened to Haw. And because he realized his fears were just making things worse. And now he starts to move in a different direction where he feels a lot more free about it. The more clearly he was able to see the image of himself enjoying his new cheese, he started believing that it could be real and therefore worked towards it. The author also says, the quicker you let go of your old cheese, the sooner will you find new cheese. And he knew that when you change your belief, you change the way you do things. And therefore, a lot of it has to do with your belief on how you're going to embrace the change. So Haw went to the cheese station N, the new cheese station. He saw the mice there. And then he realized something. He's like, these are new kinds of cheese. I've never even seen or, thought about this. And his illusion of the old cheese started to disappear. And he started to laugh at himself and, makes a mockery of his own self. Haw learnt from the mice that when you keep things simple and you don't overanalyze and overcomplicate things, then life becomes a lot more easier. And he also realized that you needed to adapt fast to keep change with the changing times. And Hem had his own way, right? The other one who was resisting the change. And for him, it was beyond his comforts and he was just sticking on to his fears. The fact is, no one else can do it for you. You have to see the advantage of the change. You have to believe in it, and that's when you will be able to embrace the change and move ahead. So Haw inspected his cheese station, the new cheese station. He started to inspect every day, checked its condition, and also he realized that he shouldn't get too comfortable with the new cheese station so that he can avoid surprises. And that's what Michael, who was narrating the story to his friends at the reunion, tells them. And all the friends thanked Michael for it, and everybody starts to share their example on how in their work, in their personal life, how they have been resisting change and how they want to embrace change based on this concept of who moved my cheese, by being more proactive and seeing how they can move ahead and embrace change in a lot better way. So, was there anything that could have been better in the book? My perspective is that the book is great, yet, like group captain said, it's a very, very short book. So maybe there could have been a little more examples, though the author has given, maybe a little more in detail could have been better, because the concept is very nice, it's simple, but also I'm not sure if it's just easier said than done, or if we can actually start implementing it into our day-to-day life, because I'm sure while we all agree to it in principle, how exactly are we going to embrace change and start implementing it? That is a question that we need to ask for ourselves. But to conclude, I would definitely say this is a very quick and easy read, and definitely a must read, especially if you're someone who's resisting change and does not want to move ahead. So with that, I have given you the gist of this.